Greetings, Maya. And I'm so happy to be talking to the author of the book, Pavings. Now, this book is making, you're seeing a mirror image, but this book is right behind Maya and it's creating waves because it has fantastic interviews with 25 women. Welcome to the program, Maya.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Okay, and I'm excited too because I'm meeting a author who has decided to break the glass ceiling, and she's got 25 wonderful women in the book. Okay, I'm not going to ask too much. The first question I have for you is what inspired you to write this book, Maya?
Yeah, so there were a couple of events that made me realize that I wanted to write the book. One of them was the Women's March, which was back in 2017, January 2017. And it was a very empowering moment for me. Looking back, I think that was the event that really opened my eyes to this world of gender equality and girls' empowerment and women's leadership, but also kind of the downside, which is sexism and sexist stereotypes and the barriers that women face every day because they are women, and gender inequality, all of that. And I was also writing for my school newspaper at the time, and I needed something to publish for the next issue. And so I reached out to my local newly elected mayor, and we had a great conversation. I published it in the school newspaper, and at the end of our conversation, she suggested that I reach out to a couple more female politicians, and so I took her advice, and I spoke to Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. I spoke to both of my senators for Washington, Senator Patty Murray, Senator Maria Cantwell, Mayor Jenny Durkin of Seattle. And so after that, I kind of branched out into other domains like journalism and filmmaking to speak to women in other fields. And that's kind of where it went from there. And that was when I realized that I wanted to put these interviews into a book to share their stories and their struggles and advice that they had.
Fantastic. That you put everything into a nutshell. So, from the day of your march, which I think is so inspirational, because at the time it was 2017. How old were you? In 2021, 4 years ago. So were you 13 or 14 or?
Yeah, something like that. I was in middle school.
Okay, and for someone to be inspired at the age of 13, 14, when you're in middle school and seeing all those women marching, were there guys marching as well? Just a question.
Yeah, everyone was there.
So that just goes to show how many people wanted gender equality and things like that. And I think something must have struck within you, Maya.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. It was just seeing so many people, and I think I talk about this in the introduction of the book. There were thousands and thousands of people. Like, I literally could not move. We moved with the crowd. We were shoulder to shoulder. So there were so many people, and seeing all the signs and all of the cheering and the wave, which I describe in the book, was just so eye-opening to me, because as a middle schooler, my bubble really consisted of friends, family, and schoolwork. I really didn't listen to the news that much. I didn't watch the TV that much. And so going to the Women's March really opened my eyes. And I think at the same time, I had done that initial interview with my mayor, my newly elected mayor. And so that's kind of what set everything.
I think that she was the first role model. And before that, it was Polly. I think you spoke about her and how she wanted to solve the traffic crisis in Seattle. So that sort of sparked something in you. And wow, she's got solutions. So I think that's something you pointed out, that all the women you interviewed, they were sharing how they overcame problems. And that's something really what I, as a woman leader, I learned that from the book, how other women are coping, right? And for you, tell me, when you wanted to do these interviews, I don't think it's a piece of cake, because we in the media know that it's such a tough thing just to get one top person to be on your show. So what were some of the challenges that you faced, Maya?
Well, I definitely faced a lot of rejection. and really early on, honestly, throughout the entire process, while I was trying to reach out to people and get interviews. But I had done an interview, I think my fourth or fifth interview was with journalist Ashley Parker, who's the White House bureau chief at the Washington Post.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things she told me, and I think I've highlighted this in her interview, she said, if you're not good at handling rejection, then get good. And she put it quite clearly. And that because of that, that piece of advice has kind of stuck with me this entire time. While I was getting rejected, and I had to learn to make sure that rejection wasn't pinning me down. Otherwise, I would have given up a long time ago. I had to make sure that it was fueling me and gave me gave me the energy to keep on going. The challenge, I think, was scheduling the interviews at odd hours, because I was talking to some women internationally. So, for example, Squash Falconer, she lives in the UK, and so scheduling the interviews right before school started or during my lunch break, between classes, right after school. But it was a fun experience.
And it's a long journey. It started in 2017, and you completed this book in September 2020. And the marathon that you did, keeping up with the international time zones, it's really amazing, in between school homework as well, right? Tell me, who was the driving force behind this book?
My main inspiration was while I was writing the book, because I was facing a lot of rejection and it was a lot of work, while balancing schoolwork, was, I think, my parents. They encouraged me the entire time, and they, if I ever felt like giving up, or if I ever which I rarely did, by the way, because I was so grateful that I had even the opportunity to work on a project like this, but they were always there to support me if I ever felt overwhelmed.
Okay, and I think you brought out this question, this word again, rejection, right? And that's something you learned pretty young, because most of us learn about rejection when we go to work, right? And then you don't get a promotion, or you don't get a story in the case of a journalist. Then yes, you face many rejections, or your story is turned down because it's not good enough for your boss. But you took it, right? With all these things like yes, no, and I can imagine the excitement that you must have been going every time someone answered and said, yes, Maya, I'm willing to be interviewed. And the kind of euphoria that you experienced at the march, and for the last 3 years, you've been in it. You were very relentless. You had the tenacity to continue, right? Not stop pushing for it. Was 25 women something that you targeted in the very beginning, or was it something you said, okay, this is too much for my book, it's getting thicker?
I never really had an end goal when I started the book. When I started, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was like, I didn't even know if the book was going to work out, if the format would work out to share these interviews. And so I really had no end goal, but I think once I got to 25, I was happy where it was at. And I also had a rough timeline. I wanted to publish the book before my high school is over. And so I think it made sense to me to stop it at 25.
It's also interesting.
Of course, I'll just say, there are more than 25 incredible women in the world. There are thousands and thousands, but these are the 25 that I have highlighted.
But it's wonderful, because for me as a reader, I think that, absorbing these 25 stories, what you've done is taken women, you've highlighted women in politics, women in, in space and science, and women, even researchers, president of a university, right? A mayor, right? A prime minister, so you have women in media, right? So you've basically covered all these women in Wall Street, or was it NASDAQ, or, all these things that people are talking about. So women in finance, right? And even women who have done their own startups, like what was it? Some Weddington or something, So these these are very exciting stories, right? And stories of women and how they have managed and how they have really rose to the top. And all of them shared something very exciting. All of them talked about the challenge. All of them talked about not giving up. And yeah, so tell me, what was your personal takeaway? You interviewed 25 women. What was your takeaway from that, um, from all these women, Maya?
Well, there are these six pieces of advice that they're just now stuck in my head, because you know, even after 3 years,
Mm.
these overlapping themes and their pieces of advice are really the ones that have stuck with me, and those are being curious, being able to handle rejection, like I've said, having empathy and respect for others, and being the change that you want to see, defining your own success, always aiming higher. Those are kind of the six main pieces of advice that have stuck with me today and that I'm trying to employ in my own life, because these women have experienced, even though they're in such different fields, they have kind of the same experiences when it comes to being a woman in you know, their industry. And so uh, those are the main lessons from me from the book that I like to share with people.
Fantastic. You know, I could just, I have to agree with you because these are some of the points that I spent a whole day reading your book. I would say absorbing the book, right? Because I'm a media person and I do the same thing as the other media people do, read and understand and try to grasp what the author is saying or what the women are saying. Now, one of the things you also asked all the women were, what would they do different if they could go back to being a young person again? So, was that, why did you ask that question?
Well, I asked that question from the perspective, from my perspective as a young girl, or as any young girl or young boy or young person that might be reading this
Mm-hmm.
book. Um, what advice that these women, these 25 women, would give to us. And so if they were to, you know, kind of go back in time and maybe do it all over again, what lessons have they learned and what advice would they give? And that was the perspective that I had going into asking that question. And I think I also asked these women, what advice would you give your younger self, or what advice would you give to young girls who want to be like you or be in journalism, things like that.
And so, what did you learn from those kind of questions? And all of them said something. So, what did you learn as a young person?
I mean, I think I learned how important it is to just be confident in yourself, and being confident is so important. I think it's become a bit of a cliche, but it is really important to be confident in your own skin, to be able to have the grit and perseverance to overcome any challenges and obstacles that are thrown at you because of who you are.
And not limiting yourself, right? Just letting
Yeah, yeah,
yourself,
yeah.
achieve whatever, like what you did, right? You didn't let yourself stop with that one interview. You know, you went on and on. So that's like no limits. But tell me about your friends at school. Are they like, how do they look at you? You know, you're a teenager and you've got a book going and you've spoken to all these important people. So what's it like at school, Maya?
Yeah, the reaction to the book has been so amazing, especially from my school, from all of my teachers and my peers. They've been so amazing, and it's so nice to see that people enjoy and people really like this project that I've spent 3 years working on and pouring my heart out into, and so that's really nice to see.
And I find that you're a fantastic author, the way you put I mean, of course, most of the stories are what the women are telling, but when you started the part about the march and your feelings and the emotions and the way you chose your words, those were really powerful. So tell me, what's the next book that you're thinking of writing? Would you write a novel or would you go back to something like incredible stories?
Oh, another book. I mean, I'd love to write another book. This writing Paving was so much fun and so exciting. But,
Mm.
I think the thing with Paving was that I never was interested in literature or writing, to be honest. I
Mhm.
was always more into the sciences side. But like I said earlier, going to the Women's March gave me the spark, indirectly, to write this book. And so I didn't really wake up one day and say, I want to be an author and go searching for a topic to write about, this topic I feel like kind of came to me. And so with another book, if there is one, I'd love to write another one, but I'm not, actively looking for another topic to write a book about. But I know, whatever I end up doing, I know I'll continue to write about the topics that I care deeply about because that's really important to me.
But I also noticed that you asked a lot of questions on STEM, right? And what more should be done, right? And you yourself, you said you love the sciences. So do you think there's enough of STEM right there in school? What more could be done?
I mean, there's a lot to be done still for women we're talking about STEM. So women are very, very much underrepresented, especially in STEM fields. And I think people tend to think that the fight for gender equality is over. It's very much not over, and it is far from it. And at the rate that we're going right now, it'll take more than 100 years to achieve gender equality. And so there's still a lot that needs to be done. Women right now make up about 27% of the STEM workforce. And so we need to make sure we're hiring, companies need to make sure they're hiring diverse groups of people, because diversity is what increases representation. And I think people also tend to get a bit confused with this idea of diversity. While it is important, incredibly important to have women in leadership roles, it's also important to have women in lower level and mid-level job positions in companies, in the industry, in the government, because that's what really increases the ratio of women to men. And so people need to make sure companies, for example, I'm just using this example of companies, they need to make sure they're hiring diverse groups of people to increase representation.
I think that's well said. But one of the things that I also noted is the fact that women themselves, how many women really want to be in these fields, right? You get women saying, no, I don't want to be in the sciences,
Yeah.
or, this is not interesting for me to do robotics, or to be in AI or in any kind of tech field. So you interviewed one woman in tech field, I think, and she was a CNN tech reporter, right? And she shared some very interesting stories. So so women themselves need to be empowered, need to take the step forward. Don't you think so, Maya?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I think the reason that young girls aren't interested in STEM starts from a very young age. If you think about the way that companies market their toys, you can see that boys have in the store, if you go to a toy store, you'll see that the toys that are marketed very clearly for boys are dark and blue and robots, cars, transformers, all of these toys that require the critical thinking and problem solving skills that you would need for programming. But girls have these pink, sparkly, purple nail kits, makeup kits, toy dolls, which really doesn't require much problem solving or critical thinking. And so when boys and girls enter a programming class, for example, boys have a bit of a head start because they have experience with video games or building and breaking apart robots. And so companies need to really start rethinking how they market their toys. And we also need to introduce STEM to girls really early on. The earlier the better, because that's when they will be less aware of these gender norms and gender stereotypes that boys are better than girls in programming, for example. If companies stop marketing their toys like that, then hopefully I think that's definitely a step towards breaking that stereotype that
Absolutely.
Robots and stuff are for boys and dolls are for girls.
All right, so that we got to start somewhere, and that starts really young. So
Yes,
Maya, it's been a
very young.
pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much, Maya.